Today's show is brought to you by HomebrewSupply.com. Homebrew Supply is your one-stop shop for brew day ingredients, recipes, equipment, and more. Take advantage of everyday low pricing and everyday flat rate shipping only at HomebrewSupply.com. Go to HomebrewSupply.com right now and use our promo code HHH to get 5% off your order. HomebrewSupply.com. Let us help make your brew day better.
Entertaining shows with content that spreads information and sparks discourse throughout the community. This is the Pearl Media Network.
An interview with Kölsch Cup 2021 Grand Champion Brian Geraghty. This is Homebrew Happy Hour, episode 222. Hello and welcome to the Homebrew Happy Hour. This is the show where we supply the answers to your homebrewing questions and discuss all things related to craft beer. If you have a question you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, you can go to homebrewhappyhour.com and click on that submit a question link at the top of the page, or now you can call or text them in by using 325-305-6107. I am your host, Joshua Stubing. I'm just super excited today. This episode, we have with us, he's the man behind the Grand Champion batch of Kölsch for the inaugural Kölsch Cup 2021, Mr. Brian Geraghty. Brian, my friend, how are you doing today?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
Dude, I really just had you to bribe you. I was hoping you're in Florida, which is my second favorite state because Disney World's there. I didn't ask you where you are in Florida. You don't got to divulge that. We got some weirdos listening to the show, but but I love Florida. I love Disney World. If you're near Disney World, I can maybe move closer to you, have you brew the Kölsch all the time. I mean, I don't know what we got to do to work this out, but if people missed Kölsch Cup 2021, first off, what were you doing on the weekend besides watching four grown men sipping beer and pretending like we knew what we were doing? Like, that was the highlight of a lot of people's weekend. But also, if you don't know what I'm talking about with Kölsch Cup, we had a competition, very professional, where myself and Light at Joe Ermis from Homebrew Supply, James Carlson from Sam Becker International, and Todd Burns, chief keg washer and president of kegconnection.com, we judged. What did we end up having in there? It was like 59 or 61 of the 65 who entered. I think we got 59 entries, or maybe a little less. It was hazy at the end of the competition, but either way, your Kölsch, Brian, on day one, I think was cumulatively the second top rated one. And I think Joe and I did your day one, or maybe, no, actually, I don't remember doing your day one. It had to have been Todd and James, because I would have remembered your Kölsch. Do you remember who did your day one?
Yeah, it was you and Joe.
Oh, okay. What did we say about it? Because now I feel bad that I don't remember. I don't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday, though, to be fair.
Yeah, I could tell you guys liked it. I mean, I knew that much. And then, when I watched it all the way through, I thought, like, I think I did pretty. I think I'm sitting okay for the first day. But then you don't know what's going to happen the next day, and it was. I was waiting for the email to come around. I was like, oh, did my number make it? And came around on Friday, and I'm like, huh, holy cow. And I was happy with that. I was like, I'm in the top 10. That's good. That's good enough for me.
You know, and I feel that way too frequently about the things when I enter, not brewing competition. I've still yet to do a professional brewing competition or even a goof off one like Kölsch Cup was. But when I do anything competitively, if there is a big pool and I'm like top 10, I'm like, okay, I've done my work here. I'm not, if I don't get first, whatever. I was a top 10. I'm going to tell people that. Like, if I medal, it's just icing on the cake. But again, what I remember about your beer from the final day, because you were, spoiler alert, James had mentioned it on the actual broadcast, and I gave it a perfect. I think I wasn't the only score that got you up there. There was a big discrepancy between first and second place. It was like 8 or 9 point difference. So
really?
Yeah. So I think Joe, I gave it a 50. Joe, I think, gave it a 49 and then 2 48s. from Todd. So it was the highest scoring Kölsch anyway. I think James gave one of them at the third place guy. I think James was his personal favorite, and I think he gave it a 49, and that was the highest score he gave. Yours was the only 50 though that I gave the whole time, and so I was hoping again that would be useful to bribe you into sending me more of your Kölsch. You only sent us 2 bottles. That was all you were supposed to send, but I'll give you my address. No biggie. Which for YouTube people, I apologize. I am just quickly setting up in my office at my new place, and for some reason I thought I'd be good to put the natural window behind me, so all that washout I apologize for. But anyways, Brian, I want we've done Homebrewer Showcase episodes before, and I talked to Todd earlier in the week, and I said, what would be really cool is if I have his phone number, let me text Brian and see if he's willing to do the episode. And I ended up forgetting to text you until I think it was 18 hours ago. I don't even think it was a full 24 hours ago that I texted you, but I want to thank you for such short notice, again, being on the show. And I want to start it off by asking you, or let's get into your history and your background as a homebrewer. How long have you been brewing, and what got you into homebrewing in the first place?
Way back early 90s, my 2 brothers actually got into it before me, and they kind of pulled me into it. And it was doing extract batches on the stovetop. I mean, literally, half volume boils, water, and then dumping the cold water in to cool it and to top it off and that kind of thing. And I did that for a couple of years, and then with life and moving jobs, and stuff got packed up and it didn't get unpacked when I got to my next place, and didn't pick it up again probably until 99, 2000. And it was the same thing. Someone, got back into it, stovetop, extract stuff. And by 2002, I'd moved again. And it got back, packed up, didn't come out. And it didn't come out again until like 10 years later, like 2012, before I took it out again. And I started doing it. And after, 4 or 5 extract batches, I'm like, if I'm going to continue to do this, I got to go all in and go all grain, get myself a keg, start, get rid of the bottles and, get a freezer for the garage and be going the whole way. So that was probably late 2012, early 2013. And, I bought myself a bigger kettle, but I was mashing in a whole, the big orange, 10-gallon igloo cooler, and I bought a smaller one for a hot liquor tank, and eventually I upgraded to an SS Brewtech 15-gallon kettle that actually had a spigot at the bottom and all that, and then went to their. I started out I always had glass carboys from the beginning. I never really brewed in buckets, but I eventually got the SS Brewtech that stainless steel brew bucket, which I really like. I mean, it's that really, really serves my needs well.
It's a popular piece of equipment. I know a lot of people, the brew bucket, I know on the retail side of things that we sell a bunch, like Joe at Homebrew Supply. I know that they push them a lot. I think it's, they're affordable and they're reliable, and they hold the amount that most people need, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would love to be able to brew, if I could fit more freezers in my garage, I'd be brewing 10-gallon batches or bigger, but I'm maxed out in space. I can't make it any. I can't do many more.
Is your wife in the room with you? Is that why you're saying that?
No, she just walked out. No, no.
Like, oh yeah, no, I'm totally maxed out. I would never encroach on other space, and I'm happy with my. Come on, Brian. I know we find a way. Look, I see wall space behind you. We can hang the conical. You've been brewing a while, or at least you've had your toes dipped in it. When you got in it, I mean, was craft beer? Oh, like because craft beer in the boom, right, was like early 2000s. I mean, I'm saying this as a 36-year-old guy, so I don't know the 90s that great in drinking. I wasn't drinking in the 90s, but it seems like craft was still in its infinitesimal form in the 90s. Like, was homebrewing just because it's fun? Like you said, your brother's doing it, or
my brothers got into it. My sister had a guy in her circle of friends who was from Germany, and he was a home brewer. So they kind of were all in this, you know, and they were living in New York and I was living in Florida down here. So I wasn't like with them. I was only up there on vacations. But they eventually, they kind of forced me into it, or they kept, you know, I started getting, like I said, I always had glass carboys because my younger brother bought me glass carboys for a present, like my birthday present. Like I wasn't even homebrewing yet. He's like, you need to get into this. Here's a glass carboy.
My dad's equipment is because, like, most of the time it's Happy Father's Day, Pop. He's like, oh, look, it's a cooler brew setup. And I was like, yep, we're brewing. Like, you know, my mother's like, you're bringing all this stuff. Like, whoa, it's not for me, Ma. It's for my pop. It's for him. It's to get him in it. So correct me if I'm wrong. From what I heard, you're still doing 5-gallon batches. You
oh yeah. No, we like I said, my brother, buddy of mine here in town, about once a year, twice a year, we'll do a 10-gallon batch together, and then he takes half and I take half, and it's always a cream ale. We've been kind of working. The two of us have been working on a cream ale recipe where we've never brewed the same one twice. We're constantly tinkering with it, so it never, you know, it comes out different every time because we're not, you know.
You sound like James, where he's never satisfied. And, you know, through Homebrew Supply and Keg Connection, there's distinct finite recipes. Like I say finite for the most part. And so Todd finally had to tell him, and Joe do the same thing. Todd was finally like, listen, when we brew, we're only brewing the recipes we sell. And if you tweak it, then we have to change the recipe that we're selling, because we want to make sure what the customer is going to end up getting, that we have an understanding that it's a solid recipe. There's a recipe I just brewed not that long ago that Todd is now trying to tweak, because when I brought it over to him, he goes, man, something about it, and I don't think it's a flaw of the brew. I think it is maybe we need to tweak the recipe. And that, you know, so we can justify how much we brew and drink, I guess. We're calling that our R&D, our research.
Yeah, exactly.
But I get that, like what you're saying, where you're always tinkering, because there's always something more you can do. Oh, I want it a little bit drier on this cream ale, or oh, the corn kind of comes through too much, or it's not crispy enough, or something. But how many iterations of y'all's cream ale have you done, would you say?
I'd say 5 or 6.
Oh, wow. So that's a lot. Okay, yeah.
Well, it's probably more like, probably 5, really.
Yeah. But do you think with your cream ale, there's ever going to be yep, this is it, dialed in every time now we're brewing this?
I don't know that we will. I mean, so we're actually overdue for doing it. We haven't done it in a while now. So it'd almost be like starting over again.
It would almost... Which I guess, so I should have backed up and asked you before about your history as a homebrewer. Are you an engineer by chance? We have a high...
No,
okay. Okay, we have a very high percentage of people in our community, listeners and people who send us beer and for Kölsch Cup entries, who happen to be engineers. And I always wondered if that was my downfall as a brewer, that I'm not an engineer. But, you know, you always hear engineer types, especially you're talking about tinkering so much with your recipe. Like our engineer friends are never satisfied. But I guess that's kind of when you're brewing your own beer, you can afford to be like that, right? Because you're in control. You're an all grain brewer. Do you prefer to do, like, are you brewing a bag, or what method and what type of equipment are you brewing on these days?
I do both. I started like with, you know, the fly sparging, basically the full mash and fly sparging, and I kind of developed my own redneck gravity fed system. It's like, I'd love to have one of those pre-built towers that you put everything on and it feeds gravity, but I have no place to put it when I'm not using it. So because I'm max, so I rig up a ladder, and I have like a folding bench thing that I put a couple of milk crates on top of, and then my burner is I got one of those Blickman Hellfires.
Oh, those are nice.
They got the extended legs you can put on them. I started with a turkey fryer because I had that already, and the upgrade to the Blickman is definitely worth the money because it's a lot hotter and it's a lot quieter.
It seems, I don't know how they do it. Speaking of engineers, John Blickman and his team, like Doug over there and Tom, they're brilliant. They have made their Hellfire, and even the Anvil version, which I think is called the Forge.
I think so, yeah.
Very efficient too, right? It seems like I don't know if it's the number of jets or how maybe it cleans up the burn, but it seems like on a Hellfire you can get from zero to boil quicker than on what is that brand? Not banjo. Something Cajun, or you know what I'm talking.
Yeah, the banjo burner.
Bayou Classic.
Bayou burner. That's it.
Those, which I use and love, and they're very affordable, and I highly recommend them to people starting off. They're fine, but the Hellfire isn't actually that expensive. The Forge, I think, is $100. What's the Hellfire? $140?
Hellfire's like $150. I think.
It's like $150. It's worth it though. Like you're saying that, and I don't even use it, so I'm acting like maybe John will throw some money my way for talking good about it. That doesn't ever happen. I always drop that joke, and it never happens. But yes, the Hellfire is a great piece of equipment. What else are like if you were brewing, like what'd you brew the Kölsch on? Let's start.
The Kölsch I went all out. I went a 75-minute mash. I went a 75-minute boil, even though that's probably not necessary, but that's just the way I've always done any like Pilsner, the Kölsch, anything that I've got Pilsner malt in. I know it's been shown that it's likely not necessary, but instead of going the full 90 minutes that they suggest, I kind of cut the difference and say, give it an extra 15, and did a long fly sparge, and I thought, I was actually trying to, in the mash, to kind of kick it up again a little bit at the end. I was mashing it about 148 the whole way. And then I pulled some of the sparge water, heated it up, and added it before I started the sparge, because I'm thinking, well, let me try to get a little extra, kick it up a few degrees. It didn't work, whatever. Which shows I'm not an engineer, because I heated it up to like 180 degrees. And I mixed it in, and when I stirred it all in and put the thermometer in, it was still 148 degrees. So I'm like, well, that did nothing.
That didn't work.
So I left it for a little longer, and so I'm like, well, it's going to have plenty of sugar. It's going to be 148 for 75 minutes. It's going to be, and so I got through the brew day fine. Got it in the cooler. Well, I was off on the water volumes a little bit, and I couldn't figure out what went wrong there. So I think in reality, when I looked at my notes, I boiled it for actually 80 minutes, because I put in the notes that I added an extra 5 minutes, because I'm like, this is not low enough. I'm looking in the kettle. I'm like, I still got too much liquid in the kettle. So I let it go. So I cranked it up a little higher and let it go for like another 5 minutes. And then I killed it, started the water, started cooling it. And when I pitched the yeast and I let it ferment, it was going good. I started it at about 57 or 8. It was kind of like the thermometer was the thermostat kept bouncing around. It was bouncing between 57 and 58 for a good day. And then fermentation started. It was chugging along. And then about, I guess, 3 or 4 days in, when I noticed the bubbles are slowing down, I start cranking up the temperature like 1 degree at a time. Like every few hours I go out there and look at it. And I actually timed the bubbles. I get on my phone and I time the bubbles, and it just dropped down like a half a second. Then I knock it up 1 more degree, and I ramped it up until I got to like 67, 68, and I left it there for about a good 5 or 6 or 7 days after that.
Dude, I am glad your hard work paid off, because that seems like so much. Like you really did go all out. I feel great now. Like, and maybe it's inspiring, because maybe I will now put in the effort on my brew day, because it obviously pays off. See, kids, when you put in the effort, hard work, something, vitamins and prayers, it all pays off. It works out. And I missed it. If you already said it. You brew, this was a brew in a bag, or how did? No.
Well, I use the brew. I have the brew in the bag in the cooler with it has a false bottom as well, because it just works better with the bag. But I do brew in a bag. Like I have sometimes like the batch I told you before we started recording, that I did a short and shoddy one that was just a pale ale, highly hopped pale ale. I just put the brew in the bag in the kettle and do a full volume mash. And I actually built a hoist system in the roof of my garage, ceiling of my garage, so I got marks on the floor. I set the burner right in that spot, so it's underneath the hoist. And then when the time comes, I just hook it up. I have an extra 25-pound dumbbell or barbell plate, and it's on a strap with a hook, and I hook it on the thing as a counterweight, and I yank the grains up out of the thing, and it's give the bag a gentle squeeze. And
you are a squeezer.
I'm a squeezer, yeah. Get it up to to get it to the right volume, and then and I'll just boil right from there. It's efficient, but it makes the day go a lot quicker.
We got to do a video on the squeeze, because I hear from so many people, I'm a squeezer, and then I hear in my other ear like, don't squeeze, don't ever squeeze. But squeezing, you know what I've learned? It's the old adage that Charlie said in the joy of homebrewing, the complete joy of homebrewing, that just relax and have a homebrew. It's going to be fine. Squeezing is fine, not squeezing is fine. What made you decide the method of brewing this Kölsch? Like you went all out. Do you internally or maybe even subconsciously have a form of brewing that you think produces better beer, or you wanted just that much more control in doing it the way that you did it?
I've been like, since the whole COVID thing started, working from home a little bit more, my amount of brewing went up in the last year substantially. I generally, it was at probably about once a month, and arguably, if you added it up for the whole year, a little more than that, because near the end of the year, when it gets towards the holidays and they have to brew extra batches for, Christmas and all that stuff, I started to cranking them out. But I was cranking out batches this last year every 2 weeks. So I was at 2 a month, and I decided pretty early on in the year, because I always like to have a house beer, like a lawnmower drinking beer at the house. And I've had blonde ales, and I've made pilsners, and I'd done Kölsches before, and I just decided, I did a Kölsch. I'm gonna dial this in. I'm gonna be brewing twice a month now. I'm brewing like every other week. So basically, from February on, I was brewing one beer and then the Kölsch, and then some other beer like an IPA or something, and then the Kölsch. So every other batch, up through to about October, November last year, I brewed the Kölsch, and I was tweaking it the whole way along. And I thought I had a pretty good recipe going. I mean, I really liked the way it was turning out. The only thing I did different when I entered the competition is that I had gone away from using Hallertau as my bittering hop at the beginning. I was using Mount Hood for a while, and actually the last couple of batches, I think I actually used Liberty combined with some Tettnang and then a late Tettnang addition also at like 10 minutes. And I switched it back for the thing, and I'll keep it going that way, I guess, for now. I'm gonna try to repeat the recipe and not change a thing.
You told me that. You told me that before we started recording, and I think it's worth mentioning. You, and we'll get to the other stuff that we talked about pre-recording too. But this part was intriguing to me. You've never tried to replicate a brew before, right?
Not exactly. I mean, I ballpark, but whenever I've used roughly the same recipe, but it's always, sometimes I don't have the right hops, so I'll substitute something, or I'll mash it just out of, incompetence. I won't get it. I'll put the strike water too hot, and it's a little tricky down here in Florida because it gets so hot that certain times of the year when the mash tun's out in the garage, it might be whatever the overnight temperature is, but in the summertime, that mash tun's already like 90 degrees even before I don't know. So then you get trying to guess at what the strike temperature needs to be to get it in, and sometimes you end up too hot, and I'm like, I have a bottle like a soda bottle, an empty plastic soda bottle full of water and frozen that I'll take out of the freezer and start stirring up the mash with trying to cool it down, or dumping things into trying to cool it down, and because the stirring's not enough, and so it just never comes out the same way twice generally.
Yeah, and that's always my experience, and that's why I always give credit to all breweries, even the macro ones that everyone likes to piss on. Creating, and granted, they have gazillions of dollars more than we do in their setups, but people, especially at a homebrewing level, that can replicate a beer batch after batch after batch, those are warlocks to me, and witches. Actually, more females I know are better at replicating. Like Lorena Evans, I've told, and Annie Johnson, and some other ones that I know personally. I've been told to just every batch, it's like this. When you're going over there and you're asking for a lemon drop pills, what it's going to taste like to a T. Where you come to my house and you're like, that's a lot of bananas in your Kölsch, Josh. You're like, hey, shut up! It was a rough day. It was rough fermentation, but you got to follow up with me and let me know how it turns out, because I know even us internally, Todd has been about the best of the three of us with replicating a batch. Like he has in any given one, he's very random. It's not like I'm with you where I like having a house beer, and which happens to be a Kölsch frequently for me. And Todd doesn't have a house beer. He's like, no, I'm in the mood for this. Or and but he dials it in. Like he's done, you know, an ESB 1 year, and then 5 months later the same recipe, and you're like, oh my God, you nailed it, like to a T. And he always credits his system. You know, he has a nice 3-tier system that him and James built. Would you say for you, do you think the biggest thing to get past will be user error when you're replicating, or do you think it'll be a gear?
Oh yeah, probably. Yeah. I mean, I think I took pretty good notes, so I know what I did, and I know the temperatures I struck at last time, but it's getting warmer here, so that's not. I'm gonna have to put on my thinking cap and try to think that it should, you know, do I need to edge it a couple of degrees one way or the other to get, you know, started out at like 148, and then I mean it's the stuff, it's the boil off rate and the mat, you know, what you strike temperature at is that they're, you know, that's the toughest thing to manage really for me down.
When have you brewed long enough to where when you have maybe an off flavor is not the right thing, but when something is not exactly how you want it, are you experienced enough to know, it was because that extra mash time at that higher temp? Or have you dialed your process in that much, or are you still figuring stuff?
I don't know that I'm accurate. I mean, I think I did a short and shoddy batch, I think the first one of the year, like right after the new year. And I didn't, no starter. I didn't have any. The only yeast I had in the house was I had a packet of 05, and I had a packet of Kölsch yeast from Saflager or whatever the
Fermentus
company is.
Yep.
I think it was like K90, whatever the code was.
Yep.
And I'd never used it. I just had it like, well, this might come in handy sometimes if I don't have Imperial Beater in the house, and I could just, you know, throw. And I'd heard you could use these Kölsch yeasts to make a pale ale too. But I opened up 2 packets. I opened up one of 05, one of this Kölsch yeast. I pitched it in there, and the beer came out with kind of a cidery and like and a little sharp underbite to it. And the only thing, and I fermented it like at 67 rate. And I'm like, that Kölsch, and I might be completely wrong, but my thinking was that Kölsch yeast probably really needed to be down like at 57, not 67 to start. And that's probably why it's got that funny taste.
You know what? And we had one on day 1B, which I was so confusing to everybody. And I apologize for Kölsch Cup people. I should have just called it day 1, day 2 of round 1, but I made it complicated. But Joe and I judged one that was, I think the color was from a little bit of oxidation, but it was very winey in the taste. And I assumed as well, it must have been perhaps starting off too warm on the fermentation. But I don't know. The one thing, and I don't brew competitively yet, and we'll get to your history as a competitive brewer, but I wonder how intrusive I should be in the future for recipes. If I should ask on the entry list what yeast they're using and all that. I mean, in the bigger picture, those kinds of details I don't want to persuade. Like we wouldn't give it to the judges, but I'd like to. I mean, there was the top 10. I think I reached out to everybody basically in some form or fashion to say, hey, can I have your recipe? Or at least I wrote it on the sheet, right? When I was scoring it, I was like, here's what I loved about it. And by the way, will you be my friend? And can I have your recipe? Like that was my go-to thing for a lot of them. I don't believe you've gotten your scorecard yet, because I don't think it's been mailed out yet with your trophy. You haven't, right?
No. The wife is very looking forward to having the trophy here.
Well, I was going to say, if it arrived to you and it's not behind you now, I was going to have my feelings hurt. I was going to keep that trophy. Did you see the size of it? Oh, you said you watched the whole thing.
Oh, yeah, no, I've been reminded many times of the size of the trophy.
Tell your wife she's a saint. She's a saint for letting you submit the beer and for letting you, obviously, you're going to have it on the bed mantle, right? Or you have somewhere prominent.
Oh, it'll be displayed in a position of prominence, yeah.
That's fantastic. So with that, let me segue to competitive brewing. What's been what got you to enter Kölsch Cup? What piqued your interest, and what is your history as a competitive brewer? Is this something that you do frequently? Do you enjoy competing, or is that
No, I haven't. I mean, like I said, the Kölsch just happened to be the recipe that I decided this past year that I was going to try and dial in as my house beer. So I brewed it 7, 8, 9, I don't know how many times. It was like every other batch up until that I had to start brewing for Christmas. But so when you guys announced the thing, I'm like, I was getting ready to brew it anyway. I was like, well, time for, holidays are over. It's time for another Kölsch. And you guys, I'm like, well, this is perfect.
It was
perfect
kismet.
timing.
It was meant to be.
Meant to be, yeah.
Well, what got your interest in Kölsch as a style? Like, I mean, I am also a man of culture, and I appreciate the style, but you wouldn't believe how many people. Alt beer is a lot more uncommon for me to find people to enjoy, just because it's not commercially readily available. But Kölsch is also not necessarily one people go to their sports bar and go, yeah, let me get even a domestic Kölsch style beer. What got you into Kölsch and dialing it in and being so interested in that style?
I was, like I said, I tried knocking out some Pilsners, and I didn't really. I did a few times, and they just weren't. And then I tried the Kölsch one time, and literally the first time I did the Kölsch, it came out pretty good, probably better than any of my Pilsner had come out. And I believe on that one, I went on the cheap a little bit, and I only did about half Pilsner malt. I think I used like regular raw 2-row. Like I mixed it in, and it came out all right. And then the next time I went all Pilsner, I'm like, well, that came out better. And then I just kind of started playing it with it like that. And then a buddy of mine in town here who brews with me, he got into this. He was always doing a lot of German beers and lagers and whatnot. And he got into this buying the Weirmann Bohemian floor malt Pilsner, which is different than the regular. So I was using the regular for a while, and then I happened to be in there's a great homebrew store up in Tampa. I didn't get to travel a little bit for my work. So whenever I'm up there, I always go there. It's great. It's got a little brewery attached to it. It's fantastic. They got tons of different grains.
What's the name? Yeah, you can name drop.
It's Southern winemaking and homebrew.
Awesome.
It's in Tampa.
In Tampa.
Great place. And I bought a whole sack. I'm like, well, I'm out of Pilsner, and I'm like, they got the Bohemian. And I'm like, I'll go look for my buddy. I'll get the floor malted, and you definitely can tell the difference. Because the next time I brew the Kölsch, you can definitely tell the difference. And then when I was up there, I also noticed that they had a grain called Cologne malt. So I'm like, well, that must be for making Kölsches, I assume, and that's what it's called. So I bought some of that, and eventually I started blending that in like 50-50 with the floor malt. And I think that really is one of the keys to, why it comes out as good as it does. And I think that combination of grains is what I like anyway.
Well, and obviously it's what we enjoyed as well for our judging our palates. So this was your first, prestigious competition, I would call it, maybe.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think I did one local one here that the local one of the bottle shop / homebrew store combination, and a couple of the local breweries had like sponsored a little like a homebrew festival or whatever. They were in the park. We were in the park a lot of the store. We were setting up tables and tents, and people were paying money to come and sample homebrew, and they collected up, took some from everybody, and they had a kind of an impromptu not a certified competition, but I didn't come anywhere near. I realized actually at the end of that day when because I had pretty regular beers. I think I had like a Dale's Pale clone recipe, and I had some other not too fancy. Everything at that competition was like, mango, wheat. Whatever it was like, it was all every crazy, pina colada, Happy Vice. I mean, it was every crazy combination of stuff, and you can see that's what was doing well. And I'm like, okay, you had to have all kinds of nuttiness in order to get anybody's attention at one of these competitions.
It sounds like club night at a homebrew con. I don't know if you've ever been to a homebrew con.
No. I was hoping to go, and then like last year, and now this doesn't look like it's going to happen again.
Yeah, it doesn't, right? That's the unfortunate thing, because we were looking forward to presenting in person this year, and we are not looking like it's going to be that way. Unfortunately, they haven't made anything official, so I'm not speaking as a thing of authority, but I am preparing our stuff for virtual again, because I think the way California is right now, and this isn't a knock on them, just their current policies with COVID and events and all that, I think it's safe to say that San Diego's not hosting HomebrewCon this year, right? Like,
I would, if I was a betting man, yeah, that's right.
Well, see, and I am a betting man, and I'll bet you $5 and I'm going to lose, and they'll have HomebrewCon. See, that's how we get HomebrewCon back.
That might be the way to do it.
I'm going to call Todd. I'm going to call him right now and say, I bet you $5 that HomebrewCon goes virtual only. And he'll go, oh, I'll take that bet. No, he won't, because that would be the $5 bet I win this year. He doesn't take bets with me that he thinks I'm going to win. That's the problem. I'm stupid confident in bets for 5 seconds, and that's all it takes for me to make the bet. And immediately I Google, I'm like, son of a gun, I was wrong. Here's another $5. I am totally digressing, which I frequently do. I apologize. With your Kölsch and with the competition and all that, I'll wrap up that part by asking, is competitive brewing, like, are you going to submit? I don't know if it's too late for the AHAs. I don't think it is too late. Are you interested in doing more competitions? Like, was the event, again, you don't have to butter me up. I know we created a fantastic and fun environment, and the live stream was something I actually really enjoyed doing, because even though it was kind of boring, I wish more competitions would pick that up. I wish that they would do more engagement with the competitors and being able to allow people to.
Yeah, it was fun. We watched it both days. It was all 3 days, actually. Yeah.
And I really do. With the AHA, I try to give them feedback, and I probably come across as a douche to them, where they're like, "Oh, here's another email from Joshua Stubing. Oh, yeah, Josh, great idea. Maybe next year." But I do think bigger competitions would better serve their community and their competitors by being more interactive with them, or even if you're not mic'd up and whatever, just having some kind of, I think people who compete, we're doing it, or in anybody who's involved in a competition or a homebrew club or just brewing with their friends, the community part of it's the funnest part, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
It's the funnest part. And I know we talked about beforehand, you're not a formal member of a homebrew club. I'm not either, besides the super duper club that we host through the podcast, but that's all remote anyway for the recipes we're sending. But anyways, back to my question though, is competing more regularly a thing you think you'll do? Or was it just like Kölsch is what I like. I'm confident in my recipe and I'll do that.
After I won this, the thought has crossed my mind, is like, well, now should I find a BJCP certified competition and brew it and send it there to see how well it performs, if it performs well again. And if you guys do another one, I've never brewed an alt beer, but I'll be buying the kit from James and brewing that one. If you guys, that's going to be the next competition you guys. I
think that's the next one we're doing. I don't know. Someone did suggest, they said a breakfast stout bowl, and because trying to be with the cup. I don't know what the alt was, for alliteration's sake, if there's a word that starts the alt awards. I don't know, but alt beer seems like one. James and Todd's primary concern with it is just the lack of commercial availability, and so people might be timid to enter it if they don't know what it's supposed to taste like. But I told them, like, especially if we could get Horst Dornbush down, where having him judge, I think people would like that. I think they would like to, maybe, I don't know what this is supposed to taste like, or if this is correct, but Horst is saying good things about it. So I'm obviously did good things with my alt beer. But I had suggested, we have to figure some other style too, because we can't a listener suggested, do multiple styles, like a whole thing. We don't have the resources for multiple styles or the expertise, but the second part might be getting filled out soon, because Todd does want to get BJCP certified. I think he thinks it's easier than it's actually going to be, but I think you should have, if you have any of that batch left, send it to the AHA for this year. I think it's a winner. And then if they come back and their judges who are BJCP say bad things about it, send them my way. We'll talk to them. Todd's trying to get in on the judging going on, because they're if they don't have it in San Diego, I've heard through the grapevine that they're going to do all the judging at a central location, like in Boulder or Denver. I forget. Well, the AHA is in Boulder, but I think they have a big warehouse in Denver. Todd's trying to get in on either way. If we're in San Diego, he wants to be a steward to watch them judge, and he also, if they do it in Denver, he wants to fly there to do it. But is judging or any of that something that interests you? Like, when you drink beer, do you have that sort of not condescending, that's the wrong word. Do you find yourself, the longer you've been at it, like a better palate and being able to identify things in your beers more, or is judging a beer the last thing in your mind? You just want to enjoy what you're drinking?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think my palate's really good enough to. I mean, I try, but I'm not as good at picking up stuff that's not been suggested to me. Like if you say, "Wait, don't you taste the pineapple?" Oh yeah. That's like, but and sometimes I can figure it, but I'm not even good at just finding the little subtle notes. Yeah. As some people I witnessed do. Like they'll be tasting something and be like, "Hey, don't you taste?" And then when I take another sip, it's like, I guess you're right. I didn't catch that, but
I don't know if you're subtly jabbing at me, but you said you watched all 3 days. That was me with Joe next to me, where I would say, "Do you sense?" And then I'd let him finish the sentence. I'd be like, "Yeah, that's it. I sense that too. That's absolutely right. Hide. That's right. I sense that same thing, Joe. That's why I partnered myself with. Well, I could have partnered. Joe James was my top choice. I don't think he wanted to be partnered with me. I get it. And then Joe, and I would have done Todd, but we wouldn't have gotten much done because Todd's if you read his feedback, it's very much like, this beer is good. This beer is better. This beer, Todd needs to work on his judging, and I'm only knocking him because he's not here to defend himself. But moving on, we've talked about equipment and how you're brewing whatnot right now. A lot of people I like doing on the Homebrewer Showcase ones. I like asking, in a dream scenario, let's assume you have the space and you can make the space. What is the equipment you'd like to be brewing on and the batch volumes you'd prefer to be brewing on if money and space wasn't a concern? And obviously within reason, not like, a warehouse and I'm doing, 2 barrel or 30 barrel, whatever, but like within reason.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, my dream, my goal, because I'll be moving again, and probably within about 5 years or so, we're looking for lots now. But my goal is to have a house and have a lot big enough that I have an outbuilding in the back of, I don't know what size it'd be, but big enough that it's going to be able to handle, the system that you can brew probably 15 gallons at a time, maybe.
Okay. I thought you were going to go big.
With like a Herm system with the pumps and everything like that. That's the goal to have. Have that kind of.
Yeah, I thought the pause there made me think, oh God, he's talking about it. Microbrewery. He's gonna have the pilot system in brewing. Oh, it's still small batch brewing, honey. It's just 5 barrels. It's no big deal. Is professional brewing, like, is that also in your best case scenario future? Would you quit what you're doing and be a pro brewer if the opportunity presents?
I doubt it. I mean, everybody tells you should. Even before this competition, everyone's like, oh, you should get into the. I'm like, first, I have no idea how to run a business like a brewery. I go, I'm making beer in the garage. I go, that's not the half of running a business. I go, and it's a lot of work. I mean, this is brewing every single day of the week, and running and then having to set them. I'm like, God, that's it seems like it would take the fun out of it.
I'm with you, where obviously my skills aren't there, and I'm not just being self-deprecating. I'm being honest. Like I need to be able to brew a batch, like we've talked earlier in this episode, consistently over and over and over before I would ever say, yeah, let's do it at a commercial level. Because here's my thought process, and people can write in like they do every episode and tell me I'm wrong. If I can't replicate it at a 5-gallon or 10 or 15-gallon level consistently, what makes me think I'm going to do it at a barrel or 20 barrel setup consistently? Right now, granted, maybe it is easier because of the size of that equipment and the fermenting. Maybe it does become easier. I legitimately don't know. I have to ask people who brew on those, but I feel like, man, even my Kölsch, in which by my Kölsch, I mean James's Kölsch's recipe, I can't dial in. I don't get it consistent every time, but also I'm not brewing it on the same equipment every time. Sometimes we're doing a 10-gallon batch on a cooler brew. Sometimes I'm doing a 5-gallon batch on a, not Grainfather. The Foundry is what we've been using. Grainfather is a beautiful piece of equipment too. But I feel like going commercial, I would love to do. I don't know the first thing about running that either, right? I don't know, and especially brewing consistently. Maybe, Brian, when you tell me when you follow up and say, hey, I nailed it in. It's dialed in. I do it consistently every time. Then maybe I'll plant the seed money for your future brewing endeavors. We can get you in. Is it? Oh, I don't have my dog is out. I kicked him out of the office. Who is this?
This is Brady.
Is that who was making the noise before we started recording?
Yeah.
Look at Brady. So now, was Brady present on Brew Day, or is Brew Day?
Oh yeah, no, he comes out. Yeah, he likes hanging out in the garage. He likes being outside. So yeah, he hangs out on Brew Days.
That's awesome. That's what I love. In these homebrewer showcase ones, I have a spot on here where I asked, like, how can people follow you? Like, you on Instagram or all that? I have a feeling you don't live a very public life. You seem very like brewing is something you do, but it's not the forefront. Like, do you have the Instagram of your brewing endeavors, or is he?
No, I don't. I don't Facebook. I don't Instagram.
Yeah, you're like James, or it's like James, come on, Brand, get on Instagram so I can show people what you're brewing. He goes, nah. Actually, he does Instagram now. Pardon me. Facebook, though, like, James, join it. Our super duper homebrew club, or the private Facebook group is hot. A lot of people interacting, and they want you. And he's like, nah. No, I'm fine. No, I'm good. Yeah, you have no desire to show off the Kölsch Cup on your Facebook, it sounds like.
Yeah, probably not.
Dude, you're not hurting my feelings. I get it. I spend too much time on social media. So with that out of the way, here's how we'll wrap it up. I always like getting this out of our guests. What are your favorite styles to brew? And is it correlating to your favorite styles to drink? Like, of those two categories, what's your favorite to brew? What's your favorite to drink commercially or homebrew?
I don't know. Favorite to brew is that's difficult to say. I mean, I brew a lot, especially in the fall. I'll brew a lot of porters. I have my wife's kind of a dark beer person. My father-in-law is kind of a dark beer guy. So I knock out the last 2 or 3 Christmases. I've been knocking out chocolate porter, a maple vanilla porter, and I've done other ones. I've done porters where soaking oak chips and Jamesons, like to mimic the barrel aged porter. I've done so I do quite a bit of that. I actually do at least once a year. I do the clone recipe for Wookie Jack. It used to be from Firestone. Firestone Walker doesn't make it anymore. But it was a black IPA, and I knocked that out at least once a year. That's a pretty complicated grain bill and that's another. I think it's the recipe calls for like a 90-minute boil and all kind of. It's involved, but I like that beer a lot, so I do that one at least once a year. But other than that, I mean, I like IPAs. I try to brew a lot of IPAs. Out of all the IPAs, I can count on one hand the number that I'm like, wow, that one's a good one. I could that one. If I was gonna go commercial, this would be the one to open a brew pub with. Most of them aren't like that. Most of them are like, yeah, that's not on the money. That's not, and a lot of, that doesn't come out, even no matter how many hops you put in, it just doesn't seem to have the right, and I've tried dry hopping at high Krausen in cold, or I've tried everything you can possibly do to do a IPA, and most of them I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm like, nah, that wasn't good enough. That's
the name of my memoir. Yeah, that isn't good enough. That was what I think Todd helped me with that title. But no, I'm with you. Yeah, well, for me, obviously I like the sessionable beers. I like the straightforwards. And I also drink, though, especially off tap. I'm drinking 7 to 9 ounce increments, depending on if it's a Kölsch glass or not. Because I do like drinking over a period of time. When we're at my pop's place, him and my mom and my family's there on a Sunday, I'm drinking from lunch till we leave 5.5 hours later. I don't want to be sloshed. I'm a man. I'm an adult who doesn't like hangovers or like that feeling of if you get sloshed in the middle of the day, which I've done before. I go to HomebrewCon. I go to other beer festivals. It doesn't feel good for me to be sloshed in the middle of the day. And then that nighttime, either you go to sleep really early or you.
Oh yeah, really, or like in the afternoon if it was me.
Exactly. That's what I mean. It's 4 p.m. I'm like, all right, and then I wake up at 1 a.m. and if I didn't drink enough water, I have a headache and blah blah blah. So I think that's what drew me to Kölsch originally. Well, going to Germany is what drew me to Kölsch originally. But those sessionable beers, Do you have, I know you said the Kölsch is your house beer. What's the beer of yours that you would share with people? Like if someone was visiting you and you had your best beers on tap, what's the one you go to first to tell people like, hey, try this one? Like the most universally liked beer from your friends and family?
Probably, I mean, my maple vanilla porter is pretty popular with the extended family. So that's that one, and it came out really, really good this Christmas. So it was, we had a good batch. And then, I make like a blueberry wheat also that's at least within my extended family seems to be pretty popular. It was it was the first keg to go Christmas before last. It went really quick. I mean, I tapped it and it was done like in a day and a half or something. It was,
oh God,
we had a lot of people. I
was gonna say you have a lot of people,
but it was the first one to kick. I mean, it got kicked pretty quickly.
That's awesome. Yeah, the breakfast stout is the favorite beer. It's Lorena Evans. It was her recipe. It's on Homebrew Supply. My dad and I have done it 2 years in a row, and that is by far friends, family, Todd, James, coworkers, everybody universally. That's what we have become known for. And I say known for, that's what they enjoy from us. Either we're producing such awful beer all the other times and that's the only decent one, or that one's it's been exceptionally decent. But it is funny how I have people in my family who would normally say, I don't like dark beers. And then you put a really good porter or a really good stout in front of them. And all of a sudden like, whoa, actually, this is really delicious. I don't know what it is about stouts, right? Or porters that make people initially think, oh, that's going to be too strong for me. But we were talking about last night being St. Patrick's Day. Guinness is like one of the lowest carb, lowest ABV beers.
Everybody thinks it's 4.2%, I think.
And super low carb from my understanding. It's basically a health drink. We moved to a town called San Marcos, which is like between Austin and San Antonio. And me and my wife went to school in this town. I didn't finish school, but she did. She finished college here. And it's a college town. And we were driving through the square getting home last night after running some errands. And it was packed full of people, like cars. And I was like, what is going on in this town? And then she was like, it's St. Patrick's Day, you dummy. I was like, oh, that's what it is. I forgot people go out and get sloshed. Did you celebrate last night? Because I did not. I was in bed.
Yeah. We went out. It wasn't as crowded. It wasn't a St. Patrick's Day that you would have known, but there was people out.
You're right. I should clarify, because you're right. I'm talking like if it's pre-COVID. No, I just meant way more people out than is usually out is what for me. Like you're in Florida, so y'all are.
Yeah, Florida. It's a little. They here where I am in South Florida. It's still there's like county regulations, and they're
right.
trying to keep a little fun. But if you go up over to the Gulf Coast or up north, it's like. It's wide open.
Yeah, well, I was going to say here last night, it didn't look wide open, but the area is called the Square, where all the bars are mainly. I was just, you drive down there any other night and it's empty. And then one night it's like, on a Wednesday, what is going on? And my wife, who is fully Irish, she made it a point to remind me it was her holiday. I was like, oh, sorry, lady, that I forgot. I'm such a mixed breed, German and Mexican. I don't have my own holiday. I just appropriate other holidays. But anyways, I'm totally digressing. So I want to wrap it up. I'm going to put you on the spot. Brian, are you going to let me publish your recipe? Or do I have permission? Can we share your recipe with people on Homebrew Happy Hour?
Absolutely. If Vinny Trollers can put out the Pliny the Elder recipe in magazines, I don't think I really got any, what am I going to, I've got something so special that I'm going to,
I appreciate it. And I had to put you on the spot because I thought that would help. But no, you've been such a nice guy. I knew you were going to let us. And you sent it to me already. I don't even have to. I think you sent it to me. I saw something from you.
No, I sent it to you.
Okay, I'll say I saw something from you. I've been trying to set up this office all day. I haven't actually opened emails. I've just seen who they come from. But I saw the one from you, so I know I got it. So anyways, Brian, that's all I've got for you, man. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you doing the show with me this week.
And, no problem at all.
I appreciate you entering the Kölsch Cup. That flatters me that you would enter the competition, and congratulations. I hope your trophy is on the way.
Yeah, no, I can't wait to get it.
All right, man. I appreciate it. We'll follow up with you about your second batch of Kölsch and how you think it turned out, if it's consistent.
Yeah. No, I'll when I get it, I'll bottle some up and I'll send a couple out to you guys.
Oh, no, please. No. Okay, go ahead. That'd be great. That sounds wonderful. So, all right, Brian, I appreciate your time, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Josh.
And that will do it for this episode of the Homebrew Happy Hour. If you have a question you would like us to discuss on a future episode, you can go to homebrewhappyhour.com and click on that submit a question link at the top of the page, or now you can call or text them in by using 325-305-6107. Thank you to our show sponsor, homebrewsupply.com, for supporting us and the homebrewing community. Go to homebrewsupply.com right now, use our promo code HHH, and you'll get 5% off your order. On behalf of the absent Todd Burns, James Carlson, and the Pearl Media Network, I'm Joshua Stubing. Thank you for listening.